Welcome along to this video, which is a discussion of your first assignment, which is a formal review of a requirement specification document. Now, before we start talking through the assignment requirements themselves, what we're going to do is have a look at the document that you need to review first of all, and that will give a little bit of context around the activities that you need to conduct. So, the requirement specification document itself. It's a number of pages, starting with a cover page here. Leads on to some document history and document approval. So the revision history is simply saying the document was released for formal inspection, which is effectively your assignment at this point. Document approval, well, it's empty at the moment, but if we were to port this into a real world scenario, once the formal review had completed and the document was approved, then would see it being approved by one of the managers, which would allow us to move on to, in theory, the design phase next. We've got a straightforward enough contents page after that, and then we kick into the meat of the document itself. So the requirement spec, beyond the cover page and contents and things like that, effectively has three parts. The first one being this introduction, and its purpose is to give the overall project a bit of context that will allow you some information to benchmark the requirements against themselves. So the purpose of this project, it is to develop a website or a web application that should be useful to visitors of Belfast Zoo. So to set the scene, we start off with this background section which explains what the zoo is, who they are, a bit of information around that. Talks about some of the problems they're currently experiencing, which has led to the evolution of this idea of the QU Zoo website, and then just a couple of lines on how we see this web app itself fitting in or addressing that problem. So we'll move from background into a bit of a general description, which just goes into that potential solution in a little bit more detail. We have some user personas here, which is just a bit of a description of the type of people we see using this web app itself. So again, just a bit more context that you guys can use to benchmark the requirements themselves against in terms of your review. We have a few abbreviation definitions, etc., but then we move into the second part of the requirement spec, which is the functional requirements. So functional requirements, it's the stuff that the website should physically do. It's been broken down into a number of subsections. The web pages should be included, how the navigation should operate, and then a series of page-specific requirements. So scrolling past these, which as you can see forms the majority of the document, we then come into the other requirements, which largely encompass your non-functional requirements. So standards and behaviours, largely speaking, that the website should adhere to. So we have general user experience requirements, security considerations, the different environments the web app should work on, performance measures that we expect, and then adherence with accessibility standards. So the document itself is 9 pages in total, and just to be clear, the review itself should look at all 9 pages. So you're not just looking at the requirements themselves, your formal review has the scope of the entire document, all 9 pages. So with that in mind, let's navigate back to our assignment spec. So looking at the scenario, first of all, we can see that you guys, you're members of the product team for this ongoing QU Zoo project, and you are now required to take part in a formal inspection of the requirement spec document. So in your team of 68 people, you should now prepare for, conduct, and document the formal reviews outlined below. So outlined below, we really have 3 main areas that I'm going to be looking at in terms of you conducting the formal review itself. The first one we have here is the group administration. So it's a team-based project. You're going to have a number of meetings that reflect the stages of the formal review, as we've discussed previously, and the group administration, which you'll communicate in a series of minutes, will tell me how those meetings have went and show me that you've had the appropriate discussions, etc. So I foresee a minimum of 3 meetings. First one being really your meet and greet and kick-off, allocating roles and responsibilities to each team member. There will be the conduct of the formal review itself, and then you'll have a final meeting to agree the findings of the review and sign off the corresponding group report that will ask you to do as well. So for each of these meetings, there should be a substantive set of minutes that clearly communicate all the communication that's taken place or all the discussion that's taken place between you. Now, this does not mean that it has to be a verbatim, a word-for-word description, but it should certainly highlight any key discussion points, any key debates, highlight sort of the main competing arguments if any of that has happened, and then of course the outcome of your discussions as well. You should also communicate any action points off the back of minutes there. So for example, if someone's allocated responsibility for arranging the next meeting, document that was their job, who was it assigned to, and what date that it should be completed by. So a set of minutes for each of those, whether these meetings take place face-to-face, virtually or otherwise, it's up to you guys. But what you need to do is for each one of those, make sure you have a set of minutes completed. I have provided a template with some supportive notes on Canvas as well, so you can refer to that for a bit of additional guidance. Individual preparation. So once you've had your first meeting, you should then break off, go away, and individually start reviewing the document itself. And the idea is to identify any suspected defects, any questions or any comments you have about the document under review. So for this one, I've asked you to conduct that independent review and then document it in the form of a log form, which will then be submitted as part of your assignment as evidence for this. Now, I have got a number of questions around exactly what shape this log form should take. So what I am uploading with this video is this document here, some additional guidance on how to conduct the individual preparation. I'm not going to talk through this in detail now, but what I will say is it's there to give you a start. It is not a comprehensive document, so you will need to do further reading in terms of the notes in Canvas, in terms of the textbook, in terms of your own independent research in order to bulk this up. But it should give you a good start in terms of reading through it, starting to compile a logging table, and then adding any information you need around it as well. So if anybody does have any follow-up questions off the back of this, please do come and have a chat. The only other thing I'll say, and I just want to highlight it here, is one of the points of this particular activity is to evaluate your ability to communicate your findings of your testing activities, because this independent preparation, this independent review is a testing activity. I want to see how well you can take your findings from that, these suspected defects, these questions, these issues, and communicate your findings of that review in written form. So for that reason, unfortunately, I can't really give you a separate template to follow. I can't really show you any previous work because it would defeat the purpose of this particular part of the assessment. So you've got some material here to get you started. You will have to do some further reading around it, and if you do have any questions or you're still not quite sure, please do come back and have a chat. So that is the individual preparation. So you'll have a completed log form to submit as part of that, and that brings us on to then the group report. So we've done our individual preparation. We're going to come together and do our actual formal review, and the findings of that formal review will be communicated through your minutes. Once that's taken place, then you need to agree your findings from the review. So there's going to be a bit of a group report. And what this should include, first of all, is the composition of the review team and their respective roles. Now, I have mentioned previously, I'm happy for you to rotate, for example, be role of moderator around the group. That's grand. Just make sure I know who did what role when. You should have an agreed list of defects from the requirement specification. So you'll all come together, you'll have the individual log forms, you'll go through and discuss each of the defects identified and then come up with an agreed list. So you're going to have that on there. In a lot of ways, the same guidance I provided for the individual preparation will also apply to this, so make sure you include any other information that's going to be useful to the author for planning and implementing the revisions. Finally, there should be some suitable statistics included in there. So how quickly did you conduct the review? What was the spread of severity? So how many critical defects did you find as opposed to trivial, for example? Just to give me a bit of context around the quality of the document that you reviewed as well. So you'll have one copy of the group report submitted on behalf of the review team. Moving on then, we have the submission. So the assignment itself is due to be submitted to Canvas by 4 p.m. on Friday the 19th of October. That is a hard deadline. Remember, there is no scope for extensions, etc., unless there is exceptional circumstances, in which case please follow normal procedures for that. I've given a list of instructions down here, mostly in and around naming conventions. It is very important that you follow that, because whenever I download this work, it all comes down to me as one single set of files. It doesn't automatically break down by team. So I need you to have those details in there so I can easily identify who has submitted what work, and it will save me a lot of hassle. So please do follow those instructions carefully. Finally, in terms of the assignment grading, this assignment is worth 20% of your overall module mark. I've broken it down into those three parts that we've discussed. So the team administration, that's the quality of your minutes, as I've highlighted above. That's going to be worth 25% of the overall marks. Your individual preparation then, so the quality of your individual logging form and the information included within that paperwork is going to be worth 50% of the assignment. And then finally, the group report, the agreed findings and the agreed list of defects, that is going to be worth 25%. So the three of those will come together to form 100% of this assignment, which is 20% of the overall module. Do read this assignment spec document carefully. It does sort of quite clearly lay out exactly what I'm looking for at each point. Should you have any questions, as always, do give me a shout. You've got Microsoft Teams, email, or grab me in class. So hopefully that will get you off to a good start. And on that note, I will leave you there, folks. Thank you very much.